I want to ask a series of rapid-fire questions for the record. And I thank you, Mr. Sarbanes, for joining us today. Let me begin with maybe the easiest. Mr. Smedberg, what is the position of the Metro Board with respect to the Maya legislation I described that now has the unanimous support of the National Capital Regional Delegation?
We support the Bill 2520.
Excellent answer.
Yes.
Would it make a difference getting the federal government, I mean, two, among others, but, well, maybe three things new in that bill. One is to empower the IG and give him some money out of the operating subsidy we provide. Good thing?
Good thing. And
we also provide an additional pot of capital funding contingent inter alia on safety certification measures. Would that also be a helpful thing from your point of view over and above the basic $150 million PREA funding?
that would be a good thing.
Another good thing. And then just the general concept of the federal government finally stepping up and providing some subsidy, operating subsidy for the first time. Any views on that?
That would not only be a good thing, that would be a great thing.
Great thing. Getting from good to great there,
Yes.
Mr. Wiedefeld. Okay.
Excellent.
Well, thank you. Because we need to know that we do have Metro, the local support for this bill moving forward if we're going to make a case. But I think that I personally have long believed, as a local official,
Yes.
the federal government is a free rider. It doesn't provide operating subsidies, and everyone else has to basically underwrite federal employees using
right.
Metro.
And as you know, Mr. Chairman, in Virginia, in particular, the localities are the one that pick up the lion's share
Exactly.
of it, as you're well aware.
Unlike Maryland.
And having the federal piece there is vitally important so the general manager, his team can really continue the safety, reliability, and the maintenance issues that the system faces.
Now let me ask you, Mr. Spedberg, and you, Mr. Charrington, just some quick questions of Mr. Evans. We can't ignore this subject. It seems to me, and I think to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, L'Affaire Evans, as chairman of the Metro Board, really revealed some weaknesses in internal governance. No checks and balances on ethical behavior, no commitment to transparency in terms of an investigation and the findings, no clear disciplinary measures in place when an ethical infraction is found. In this case, we had a situation where, from the beginning, the process was flawed, not documented, not carefully recorded and reported. There were lies about what the report did and did not find. And initially, he was cleared there was nothing, not true. There was another member of the Metro Board, also from DC, who decided his role was to be protector of the gentleman accused of ethical violations. Really, there were no automatic penalties. Ultimately, the gentleman under pressure resigned. But that suggests to me a system that is woefully inadequate in terms of self-policing. And what goes wrong with that is loss of confidence. We don't need that right now, especially up here, where Ms. Norton and I and Ms. Wexton and others are trying to build support among our colleagues for why this Metro system is different. It needs the full support of the federal government. That incident didn't help anything. And it's more than tell me it's gotten better. Specifically, is my delineation of what happened a fair account, Mr. Charrington? And are you, as the IG, confident that measures are now in place that couldn't happen again?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and yes, we're confident.
Very good. Thank you very much. No. Do you want to expand?
Sir?
Do you want to expand on, well, like what? Why should we be confident?
Because we believe the OIG can objectively and independently conduct any ethical investigations of Mr. Evans or any in the future, and we can also trace back and look at any policies from the past or in the future.
But that's your office. What about wasn't there like an ethics committee, Mr. Smedberg, of
Yes.
the board?
Yes, Mr.
And it completely fell down on the job, didn't it?
Well, I'm not sure we completely fell down on the ground. We did do an expedited review. We had findings. As a committee, we came together on consensus on one of the findings. But we did realize that, as you've highlighted in some of your comments there, that there were deficiencies in the process, and we admit that and accept that. And the effort over the summer, working with the general counsel and others, we reviewed what other systems do in the ethics area, and we looked for best practices, and the reforms that we put together and brought forward to the board and that were ultimately approved, we think are going to set a very high standard for us in terms of accountability, transparency. In addition to what's outlined, the ethics forms that we fill out annually have been changed, are more specific in nature, getting rid of any definition of actual versus apparent conflict, erasing that, including household members, the definition of household.
Let me ask you, Mr. Smedberg, is there a provision now so that if there are serious charges like that against a member of the board, that member of the board, without prejudice, steps aside pending adjudication of those charges?
Yeah, there would be that person would step aside if he or she were.
Which is not what happened in the Evans case, correct?
Correct.
All right. So is that new? That provision new?
Well, there would be, that was already in the code. There was no real specific as to what happens in that regard. We would certainly be open to, we assume they're going to step aside during any ethics investigation. The current code does not prevent them from participating in other board-related matters, but as it relates to the specific ethics review or violation or potential violation, that person would step aside or would recuse themselves.
I guess I want to be reassured that, God forbid, but if it be the chairman of the board, for the sake of the organization, that chairman steps aside pending adjudication of the issues.
Yeah, I mean, we would be open to, exploring that option in a broader context, not just the review of the ethics committee.
I highly commend it to you because yours is not just one audience.
Right.
And it just is essential that the person we're dealing with, be above reproach.
Understand.
And let me ask you, Mr. Charrington, while we're talking about this, you've been the IG since 2017.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen improvements in WMATA with respect to your office and how you interact with management and the board in that time period?
Well, I've always had good interaction with the board and with Mr. Wiedefeld. So as far as personalities and getting along, that's never been a problem. So to say that improved, I would say it still remains very good. As far as practices, procedures, policies of things that we've audited or investigations we've had that we've followed up on, to my understanding, the last 2.5 years, Metro Management has accepted all of the recommendations that we've made. There's been a lot of policy changes based on that. There's been a lot of positive change. So short answer, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And you feel you have adequate resources with which to conduct your work?
Yes, sir. We do now because of the relationship we have, but that needs to be institutionalized in federal law or otherwise. It needs to be sound in federal law so that my successors and so the future, so if there's a change of board management, change of Metro management, they can't make policy changes.
Well, as you know, in the Maya bill that the regional delegation unanimously supports, we have designated $10 million of the $50 million operating subsidy for your office to address the very point you make.
Yes, sir, and we appreciate the support.
Okay. Mr. Meyer, final line of questioning on safety for the record again. First of all, do you agree that if people are discovered to have falsified safety records, whose job it is to inspect safety, that they are they are disqualified from employment at Metro, or ought to be?
I don't want to give a weaselly answer because obviously Metro's got to be responsible for its own HR responsibilities. If employees are properly trained and they know how to do the job and they're willfully disregarding it, then there has to be accountability.
Sounds bureaucratic. I mean, accountability, like what?
Oh, I would agree with it.
I mean, we've had deaths on the system.
If someone is properly trained and willfully disregards procedures and leads to something like that, absolutely, they should not be working.
So you would back Mr. Wiedefeld in seeking disciplinary action against such individuals?
Yes, I would.
Without prejudging,
Yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
if it's clear, we have the evidence, Mr. Wiedefeld has had the intestinal fortitude to try
Oh,
to
absolutely.
deal with that so that we weed that out and we set a standard that says, can't do that.
Absolutely. I don't mean to appear
Okay.
weaselly on it.
Because I think the public needs that reassurance.
Absolutely, and I support him on that. Generally speaking, discipline is not something that's in the lane of safety.
Okay. Did you look at the October 7th incident in which two Metro trains collided?
Yes, my staff and I were on site during that Monday morning. We are working with Metro. The investigation is ongoing. In the day after the accident, I called for an engineering summit to be held. That was held Thursday of last week. I'm very appreciative to the number of WMATA staff that came. We had a very candid discussion about some of the caps that exist, some of the engineering approaches, and we are working now to digest that information. And of course, Metro is investigating the accident under our overall oversight.
There were printed reports that the cause of the accident was human, that it wasn't due to some electrical failure or signal failure. It actually was a human failure. Can you confirm that?
Well, human factors are a factor in most every accident at some level. The trains in the Metro system are currently in manual operation, so if a train is going to move, it must be under the operator's command. So I don't want to get into trying to blame a particular operator or a particular action because I'm interested in systemic fixes and systemic solutions. But yes, human factors are very active in the investigation.
Well, let me just say, Dr. Meyer, I'm in a system that's trying to recover ridership and that has lost a lot of ridership because of loss of confidence in safety, number one, reliability, number two. I just think I would commend to you speaking a little more forthrightly and directly. I don't know that the public would understand your last answer,
Well, I appreciate
but the public needs to. Then we need to either tell them, we can't give you a good answer, or give them a reassuring answer. But it's got to be forthright so people know the system is or is not safe. I don't want to think I take my life in my hands every time I take a Metro ride. And we've had deaths in the system.
Absolutely.
This is not a theoretical question.
We share your value of transparency. We will be transparent.
Well, I would urge you to speak transparently.
I'll do my very best, sir.
Thank you, because I think the public is counting on you.
Your
We're
words
counting on
your
you,
words
too.
mean a great deal, and we will take them to heart.
Okay.